Hey guys, Scott Adams here again. So one of the questions I get asked a lot are what percentage of my fraud or my disputes are different types. So, in general, we talk about kind of three types of fraud or chargebacks. It's, let's say legitimate chargebacks, friendly fraud, or criminal. So, just to define those to start out, legitimate, if you think of it or if you understand where things came from. So chargebacks originally came about when all the merchants were offline. There wasn't an internet at all. And it was really for whenever a merchant was failing to live up to expectations and live up to their side of the bargain. So, if a consumer asked for a refund and they're not given it, if there were technical issues, or that's more nowadays, but anytime where it really is the merchant's fault and they're really not handling it. So that would be more of a legitimate problem. Nowadays could be processing errors, it could be technical errors, could be a business is having trouble and they're not responding, these kind of things. And then, second, there's, like we say, criminal fraud. This is more, someone stole the credit card and thus it was not the consumer or the card holder that made that charge. And so anything that's truly malicious and not perpetrated by the actual cardholder. And then, finally we have friendly fraud, which we've talked about a little bit more already, and that's where it is by the cardholder or someone very closely associated, or a little broader. It could be where it looks very much like the cardholder. So it looks, maybe it's an account takeover has happened, and so you'd think you trust this card, but maybe you shouldn't have. That's more friendly fraud. And so, these are kind of the types, and these all in a lot of ways can be tackled at the same time, but in different ways. And so we'll do other videos around each of these. We've already talked about friendly fraud some, but there's obviously more to talk about. But let's talk quickly just legitimate. Something I used to do in one of my first businesses, really simple, no technology required, was just print out, not the card numbers, but like the names or email addresses, these kind of things, and sort them across the day, a week, a month. And just, either use a little bit of tech in like Excel or manually look at it and see are there duplicates. So should there be, if they don't make any sense for your business, you could have a problem. Checking in say your ticketing queue and see if there are refunds that aren't being addressed. Or make sure that if you press refund, it actually does send the money to the consumer. Looking for technical errors, these kind of things can be something that could be really low-hanging fruit if you're really early in your journey. And like I said with the text around this video, when someone asks what percentage, well, it depends where you are in your journey. So like I just said, if you're pretty new, you could have processing errors. It could be technical issues that you didn't realize you had. Duplicates used to be a much bigger thing. It's less so now, but it does happen. We just had one here where we had subscribed to a product, then upgraded, and they left the both active and billed us for both. And so, it was really easy. Luckily that vendor right away canceled. Ends up they messed up and canceled both accounts, but easy enough to solve. So these are like processing errors, and we can talk more about those too, but that's something to look at. And then, like criminal fraud, we'll dive in more in other videos, but criminal fraud, that's really where your standard, your normal, the anti-fraud systems that have been out there for a long time. We've talked about rules that can help, but also looking at, machine learning, AI, these kind of systems oftentimes can detect pretty easily criminal fraud. Anything like card running and those kind of things, because you can see patterns in it. And patterns are easier to detect on criminal fraud generally, because it probably does look like someone you don't know, and they shouldn't be doing business with you. Or at least you should be looking closely at it to make sure it's a good new customer. And then friendly fraud, again, already have videos on this, but friendly fraud takes more work. It might take some manual work. It might take using the fraud systems, but paying closer attention to the linking to values like what's the velocity, Has that philosophy been present in the past? Looking at change of locations that are major and abrupt. And so, there's a lot of ways to look at all these things, and we'll dive in further. But that's a start of different types of fraud and disputes. And so hopefully that helps. And thanks a lot.